Thanks everyone for joining us today for this special session of the UBC Masters of Business Analytics MBAN Consulting Sector Alumni Discussion Panel. So we do have a number of people joining us today for this session, but before we get started, I just would like to note that we are recording this session. So if you don't want to be recorded in any way, shape, or form, make sure you keep your voice feed muted and of course your video off. It's a webinar session, so your video shouldn't be on in any case. But just wanted to let you know about the recording of the session. So before I get started, I would like to acknowledge that the UBC's Vancouver Point Grey campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam people. We would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places, near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. So a little bit about who is joining us today. We have our two alumni representatives, Krutita, if you can give us a wave, from a senior consultant in Omnia AI strategy and M&A at Deloitte, and also Priyanshu, who is a consultant of cloud engineering at Deloitte. So we're going to hear more from our alumni guests in just a couple moments. But just an introduction to myself, I'm Vivian Tran. I'm the admissions and recruitment manager responsible for the MBAN program at UBC, as well as the MBA plus MBAN dual degree program. And I'll start this session with just a little program overview about the UBC MBAN program, and then we'll dive right into the consulting sector alumni discussion panel. So the discussion panel is going to be, a free-flowing discussion. So if you have any questions, make sure you note them. Feel free to pop any questions that you have into the Q&A, and then we're going to be going through them and pitching those questions to our panelists as we go through the session. So have those questions ready. Even feel free to start putting it into the Q&A, and then we'll get to them when this discussion panel starts. So let's go into a little bit of information about the UBC MBAN program. So a little bit about UBC itself first. The UBC Sauder School of Business is the #1 ranked business school in Canada, and the overall institutional ranking of the University of British Columbia is one of the top 40 universities in the world. So when you go to UBC Sauder, you're not just going to one of the top business schools in Canada, but you're also going to one of the top institutions in the world. We have over 40,000 Sauder alumni in 80 countries around the world. And that's just UBC Sauder alumni. If you look at the larger UBC network, we have, I think, over 300,000 UBC alumni in over 140 countries around the world. So you're getting a top-notch education in analytics, but also a global reputation along with your UBC degree. Vancouver is where this program takes place. So there's this beautiful aerial photo of the city itself. It is a stunning place to live and work. It's one of the most livable cities in North America and the world, as ranked by agencies like the Economist Intelligence Unit. And it's one of Canada's fastest growing metropolitan economies. There are made in Vancouver brands like Lululemon and Aritzia that are based here, and also large tech firms like Amazon. You've got consulting firms like McKinsey, and of course our representatives from Deloitte and Microsoft and SAP are just to name a few of the companies that are based here. For those of you that are joining us from other parts of the world, and I say the word Canada and all you think is snow and ice, just know that Vancouver has the warmest climate in Canada, and our alumni representatives can confirm this. But it is not super cold here. If you think about the weather in like London, England, for example, it's not much colder than that. We do have 4 seasons, and in the winter is kind of our worst season, maybe like 5 to 10 degrees, and rain is our worst weather. You can see we have mountains in this photo. This photo behind me is actually a picture from campus, and that is actually like what it looks like in the summertime, and the mountains is where the snow is going to be. So the snow usually doesn't come to you. If you want to go to it to go skiing or do some snow sports, that's something that you can take part in, but generally speaking, you don't have to worry about below freezing weather in Vancouver. So I know that's probably a concern for a lot of you in different parts of the world, so I just thought I would mention that right away. Another thing to note that I know that a lot of people who are joining us might be interested in working in Vancouver or in Canada after you graduate. So the MBAN program does confer eligibility for something called a post-graduation work permit to stay in Canada on an open work permit up from anywhere to up to 3 years. We don't know the amount of time that is exactly granted, but after 1 year of working under the work permit, you're generally eligible for various streams of express entry permanent residency. And the MBAN program at UBC is also eligible for something called the Provincial Nominee Program in the province of British Columbia, where Vancouver is located. So that is even kind of a prioritized fast track program for permanent residency that's offered in this province, owing to the high demand for these types of skills. So just a little bit of an overview about Vancouver and about Canada. So let's move on from there. If there's any further questions about that, you can feel free to pop that into the chat. I do have some colleagues from our admission and recruitment team at the Robert H. Lee Graduate School joining me as well, so they can also help answer some questions in the Q&A as well. Okay, so let's talk about the MBAN program journey. So we have only one cohort of MBAN students that join us every year, starting in August. So the last week of August is when everyone joins us in Vancouver, and the program is 12 months long. Now you can see that this is quite an intensive training program in business analytics. Basically, you're basically in 4 intensive courses every 5 weeks or so. So I think one alumni mentioned to me, it's kind of like marrying and divorcing 4 courses in a very intense relationship with these 4 courses for 5 weeks before you move on to the next 4 courses. Now you can see that there are breaks in between these 5-week periods, as well as thematic courses in things like data visualization, business immersion, data-driven marketing. And then the green elements of this program journey denote kind of career development aspects of this program. So there is a strong focus on helping you develop the career aspects of your personal and career journey as you go through the MBAN program, as well as getting you the academic content and experiential learning components. So when you're in the program, you're going to have access to a full service business career center. You're going to have access to one-on-one career coaching with professional career coaches. Our business career center also runs lots of workshops on things like presentation skills, resume writing, salary negotiations. And they're also there to coach you through your application process. So reviewing your resume, coaching you through the application process in your interviews. So there's a lot of support that you get from the Business Career Center. There's also a hackathon that happens during the program. So this is an optional component of the program, but over 80% of our students will do it. It happens during your break. And it's always with an industry partner. So last year, our partner that offered the hackathon projects was Google Cloud. So it's a really great opportunity for our students to apply the skills that they have been learning in the previous months in the program, but also showcase their work to some of our industry partners. And then, of course, put that on their resume as some experience as well. The highlights of experiential learning in this program is the 4-month paid consulting analytics internship. So that is a paid internship. Over 90% of our students will do it. It is a mandatory part of the program. So it is very popular, and it is self-driven, of course, but the BCC offers a lot of support behind making sure that you are successful in your internship search and acquisition. Now, if you don't choose to do an internship, there is also the option of completing your degree with a personal research project as well. So that is the 12-month program in a nutshell. Now, some of you might be interested in the MBA plus MBAN dual degree program, so I'll go briefly over that as well. This is a 2-year program. Now, normally speaking, the MBA, if you were to do the two programs all together, it would take you 28 months, so 2 years and 4 months to complete. But because you're doing this program in a dual format, the last 4 months of the 16-month MBA program, which are basically elective courses, those would be double counted across the 2 degrees. So you can finish the 2 degrees in 24 months time. Now, when you finish the MBA plus MBAN dual degree program, you'll essentially get 2 diplomas, one MBA diploma and one MBAN diploma, and you'll be an active and fully fledged member of each of the 2 cohorts. So it is a dual internship. So you'll have the MBA internship as well as the MBAN internship. And then you would have all the different elements of the MBA program, which is much more kind of elective driven. There's a lot more kind of choice in the MBA program versus the analytics program is just kind of more of an intensive training program. So no electives really in the MBAN program. So that's about the MBA plus MBAN program. If anybody has further questions about it, feel free to pop those questions in the chat and we'll be happy to help you out with that. Now, admissions requirements, I'm not going to go too much in detail about it because you guys can just do a little screenshot of this if you like, but essentially we're looking for a B+ average. I'll provide a resource in just a second to show you what this B+ average translates to for degrees from different countries, but essentially keep in mind it's like a B+ average we're looking for in terms of your undergraduate GPA, GMAT, GRE, requirements are written there. No professional experience is required for the MBAN program. So people can join whether they are brand new from an undergraduate degree or they have 10, 15 years of work experience. Because it's more of a training program in business analytics, it could be suitable for people from all different backgrounds. Minimum of 2 references. If you are coming directly from an undergrad, these can be academic references. However, if you've been working, we're going to want references, at least one from someone that you reported directly to, either in a previous or a current position. A variety of written and video essays, English proficiency tests, only if your degree was not, only if the medium of instruction at your institution was not in English. We'll need an IELTS at a 7 across the different bands, so average of 7, or a TOEFL at 100. And the personal interview is the last stage of the process, 30 to 45-minute interview, really just to get to know you better and cover any aspects of your application that don't come out in just a written application, for example. A little bit of MBAN career outcomes. You can see the top industries. So obviously you're at a consulting sector alumni panel. It was one of our biggest industries for the MBAN program. So we can talk more to our alumni about the importance of analytics in this sector, which is why the sector hires like a lot from the MBAN program. You can see there's a range of salaries. Now, remember, like I said, this program is allowing people to join either directly from an undergrad or they have 10, 15 years of work experience. So that salary range really reflects this huge difference, or just the spectrum, I would say, in terms of where people are coming from. So obviously on the higher end of the spectrum, people might be on more of the leadership track already, having worked for quite a few years. Average salary 90 days after graduation is over 90,000, and 81% were employed within 90 days of graduation. Now you can see some of the top MBAN employers were the consulting firms. So it's really great that you guys are all here to learn more about the consulting sector. Now, if you guys want to know more detail about MBAN career outcomes, our career strategist for the MBAN program, Joyce, did a webinar fully on just MBAN career outcomes. So feel free to screenshot this slide here and follow the link on the QR code to watch the full webinar. Grade translator, I said I'd give you like a little bit of a resource in terms of what that B+ average stands for. Feel free to screenshot this to follow that QR code to get what the B+ average means in the country where you did your undergrad. So you can just select from the different countries there. There is a waiver process for people that have like a fairly strong quantitative background as well as good grades. So this is the requirement. I'm not going to go through it because I want to jump to the our discussion panel, but feel free to screenshot this if you want to learn more about eligibility for a GMAT GRE waiver for the MBAN degree program. Now note, if you are international, you must submit a fully complete application by our January 9th deadline to be eligible. So that means everything needs to be in, including things like references, which is something that usually students have no control over. So I always recommend students apply way before this January 9th deadline, especially if you're applying for the GMAT GRE waiver, apply as soon as possible because it's not a guarantee that you get it. So you might still need to write this test if it's not successful for the waiver. If you're applying for the MBA MBAN dual degree program, there is a separate set of qualification for the waiver. This follows more the MBA waiver process. So the criteria is slightly different because we know you're going to do the whole MBA first, so we're relatively assured that you're going to be fine in the MBAN program afterwards. So if you're doing the MBA MBAN dual degree program, please feel free to screenshot this page to follow the criteria for acceptance for GMAT GRE waiver eligibility. Here again, make sure you submit a fully complete application by our January 9th deadline. Okay, now like for both any waiver process, you need to submit a statement of qualifications. So here I will speak a little bit more about it. Like you need to really talk about like the different courses you took that meet the requirement for the GMAT GRE waivers. So the 4 quantitative courses, for example, you might want to talk about some of the quantitative elements of the courses you take. This statement of qualification is more for us to know because there's differences in terms of what quantitative courses are named across institutions around the world. So the more detail you give us in terms of the quantitative work you did given those courses, the more we know that it's an appropriate course to substitute for, not having to write the GMAT or GRE. All right. Now, the January 9th deadline is significant for a number of reasons. Now, one is eligibility for the GMAT GRE waiver, but another is a major scholarship deadline is also on January 9th. So we do have regional talent scholarships up to full tuition for students that apply, that are eligible for these scholarships that apply before our January 9th deadline. So keep in mind January 9th, super important if you want to be considered for a GMAT GRE waiver and also for this large tranche of scholarships that we have available up to the January 9th deadline. Canadian applicants have until the spring to apply. So now this is primarily, this January 9th deadline is really prioritized just because we want to make sure that everyone has enough time if you're international to get your study permits in time. So that's why we prioritize this January 9th deadline so heavily for international students, just to mitigate any risk that you don't get your study permit in time. Deadlines are here. So that second round deadline, I said, super important. If you're applying for a waiver, apply as soon as possible, just because it's not guaranteed that you would get the waiver, the GMAT GRE waiver. And also it is our deadline for the large scholarships as well. Okay, so if you want to get to know us more, feel free to screenshot this page. We have student chats with MBAN alumni ambassadors that are currently in the MBAN program, so you can talk to them more about what it's like to be a student in the program. And then here again, there's a QR code for upcoming other MBAN events that are coming up as well. So with that said, I would like to commence our alumni discussion panel. So I would ask Priyanshu and Krutita to please unmute, and we will get started with our panel. Okay, so why don't we start with some introductions? Can either alumni please introduce yourselves, tell us what your undergraduate major was, and tell us about your work now.
I'm Kritika. Welcome, everyone. Happy to be here. I was born and brought up in Dubai. That's where I did my high school and schooling. And then I did my undergraduate from Indiana University in the US in accounting and finance. So nothing related to data analytics to start with. But then I worked in the US for about a year with a local CPA firm and then went to Dubai to work with Deloitte. That's where my analytics journey started. I did some audit analytics with them, which basically you transform the manual audit procedures into a more robust analytics procedure. And then I decided to do my master's with the MBAN program. And then I decided to work with Deloitte Omnia in AI strategy. So I am more on the strategy side of things where we consult with companies on how they can grow their strategy practice within AI from scratch. It could be ranging from starting your data office to implementing generative AI. So it's a wide spectrum of strategy options that we provide companies, but that's essentially where my role lies right now.
All right, thank you so much for telling us more about yourself, Krutita. Priyanshu, can you please tell us about yourself, what your undergraduate degree was, and also what you're doing in your work now?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born and brought up in India, and I did my undergraduate in electronics and communication engineering. And after that, I joined one of the telecom firms there. I was working as a product manager for around 3.5 years, where I was taking care of the complete product life cycle of wireless and telecom products. Again, nothing to do with analytics there, but since I was handling different facets of management, I kind of required a need basically to understand analytics and to basically form strategies or basically to come out for for some decisions depending upon data. And that is where when I started scouting for some of the programs in India as well as outside India, where I could learn some of the analytics and start using them into product management. So earlier I wasn't planning to go into consulting as such. It was more about the need in my current role, in my previous role, to understand more about analytics. And that's how, I landed up and, started searching for these kind of programs. And SORA program was definitely, fitting into my requirements and what I was looking for. It is, again, a beautiful city, a beautiful program, and it's a really good mix of students out here and gives an opportunity to learn from your peers as well. So that is how I landed over here. And I didn't have any coding background, and I was really new to R. I was really new to Python, and I was really finding it very difficult to start and learning Python and R programming. And though I was able to learn and I was able to implement, I was able to build models and everything. But again, I didn't want to sit in front of the computer and do coding all day long. So that's why I started looking for consulting options as well as business analytics options, where I'll not have to do a lot of coding, and things might just restrict to building strategies as well as building a visualization dashboards. So I actually consulted Career Center, and they said probably for this kind of career path, you can either look at consulting or you could look at business analytics. So that's how I started scouting for opportunities in consulting sector. And so it was right when I got into the program, and I got to know that was the time to start applying for consulting positions. So I did that, got an offer from Deloitte, and then I joined cloud engineering. In cloud engineering right now, again, there are two aspects to it. One is basically, which is completely technical, where people build some kind of softwares, and they also build solutions on cloud using their development skills. And other part is building strategies for organization to move and transform their business to cloud. So that is where I sit into. I'm more on the strategy side, building strategies for these firms to do their business transformation. And so a long introduction, but yeah, that is what I'm doing currently.
No, that's excellent. I really appreciate your introduction, Priyanshu, because it does actually touch on some of the questions that we also get, like what is the difference between a data science program and a business analytics program. So I would say, and feel free to add your thoughts on this, that this program, it teaches you about the data science, but it also teaches you about the business side of analytics as well. And I think that's why it's one of these programs that is so successful for students that are going into the consulting sector.
Exactly, and I completely agree with that, because
any thoughts from the both of you about the difference, the value added of kind of a business analytics program versus just a pure data science program for applications into the consulting sector?
Yeah, for sure. I can add my thoughts on this. So as I said, there were a mix of students back in the batch. There were students who had complete good understanding of programming skills and everything. And then there were people who were purely from the business side, and they didn't have any idea about, doing programming. So this program, which is the Masters of Business Analytics, gives you a facet, or gives you experience of, both the facets of business side as well as technical side. So if you are someone from a background which is completely technical and you're good with coding, you'll get an idea about the business side of it and how to use your skills in the business sector. And if you're someone who is completely new to the coding, then you'll get some hands-on experience on the coding as well. So it gives you an experience and knowledge about both the things, and helps you to navigate your career in either direction. So you could also go into data science if you are someone who is really good at coding, good at building models using tools like Python and R. And if you are not into that and you are more on the business side and want to do some visualization, or you want to build strategies for your company or for your clients, then you can go into consulting or business analytics side of it. Whereas if I compare it with something which is a data science kind of a program, it will be purely technical. It might not touch on a lot of business side, and your career trajectory probably might go towards data scientist role, which are like more technical and hands-on when it comes to building models and doing coding all day long.
Mm-hmm. And Krushita, anything to add about the difference between data science and analytics kind of applications in the consulting sector, or the general importance of business analytics in consulting?
Absolutely. Quite like what Priyanshu said, it really depends where you want to be within consulting, right? Even when I talk about Omnia AI, the closest that I am to Omnia AI, we have pillars where you can choose to be absolutely technical. You can choose to take the data engineering, data scientist route, or you can choose to be within strategy, right? Where you need to know of all technologies that are around, but you might not need to know the crux of coding or programming or building the solution from scratch. And I think the MBAN program really equips you with the right skills, where they have courses in Python and R and SQL, but they also have courses that teach you how to use that from an investment perspective or from a finance perspective. They have the hackathon that gives you a case study where you have to analyze a business case and then provide a data-driven solution to it. So I think they give you ample opportunity to use your skills from a business perspective and an analytics perspective. And honestly, for someone, I saw in the chat, someone was talking about how was the transition between finance and data analytics. Sure, the transition isn't easy and natural, but I think the MBAN really forms a strong foundation for you to be able to pick up these technical skills. They pretty much start from scratch with Python, SQL, and R. So anyone that's coming into the program with not so technical experience will be able to pick up really quick. And it goes at a decent pace where you're able to pick it up and practice on the go. So I think the skills that you get from the MBAN program are really helpful in the consulting sector.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for answering that question. So I just want to remind the audience that feel free, if you have questions for our panelists, to put them into the Q&A, and then we're going to pose the ones that are relevant to our panelists to live, and then answer any questions that it's just on the admission recruitment side later on. So I have a question for both of you, and I'm sure it's on the top of a lot of people's minds when they're considering doing a degree to potentially get into the consulting sector. But can you describe what is the intake of students like in the consulting sector? Let's say they do an MBAN degree or they do another advanced degree. What does the recruitment cycle look like, if you have any thoughts on that?
I can take that, and then Priyanshu can add to it if he has anything. But recruitment for consulting starts very early on. It starts between August through October, I want to say, or maybe even slightly earlier. So sure, students coming into the MBAN might not have decided that consulting is the route they want to go. But I think if you even have a little bit of hunch towards consulting, you need to start applying very soon into the program. And it's fair to tailor your resume to the skills that you might be acquiring over the course of the program. So maybe you don't know R right now, but it's fair to tell the interviewer that, hey, I might know the basics, or I might not know so much about R, but I've learned SQL and I'm able to apply those skills, and I will pick up R during this program. So when I do join you next summer, I'm going to be well equipped with those skills. But yeah, the intake starts, I got my offer in October. So of the program, and the program starts in August. So it does happen very quickly.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And Priyanshu, do you have anything to add onto the recruitment cycle for consulting?
Yeah, I'm completely in sync with what Kritika said. And since I'm leading the campus engagement practice as well, out here in the West, so I can add on to that. So yeah, she's right. The first cycle, which is the fall cycle, starts from mid of August and goes until mid of September. and that's when students can apply for the fall cycle, and the interviews get scheduled after that, and you get your offer by October. So it was the same case for me. I was like 1 month into the program, and I had to apply like to all these positions, which were like from Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. And after that, interviews are scheduled, and you get your offer by October. The second cycle, which we call the winter cycle, that starts from around mid of December and goes until mid of January. So that's like the second cycle where you can apply for internship as well as full-time positions. So internships basically starts from summer, which is around May or June, and your full-time again is for next year starting September onwards. So that's the winter cycle. And then there's last cycle, which we call spring cycle, which starts somewhere around March and goes till April. So for consulting, the main cycle is the fall cycle. That is where you get most of the openings. But in the winter cycle, again, there are certain vacancies which are not yet filled by the fall cycle. So we go for some of these positions in winter cycle. And then lastly, in the spring cycle, we have very few positions which are still open for full-time or internship roles. Internship roles are mostly filled during the winter cycle and the fall cycle, but the spring cycle would still have some full-time roles. So that is how you can prepare yourself and look at these timelines. But again, I would say if you want to go into consulting, target the fall cycle, because that is the most important cycle, and that is where you get most of the openings and vacancies.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And I see that this discussion has sparked a few questions in the chat. There's a question kind of related to the interview and recruiting process. Maybe you can add to it. So the question is the recruiting interview process similar for the process of traditional management consulting, like case interviews, or are the consulting roles MBAN students get into more technical in nature?
I can give you my perspective on this. Pretty similar to general management consulting roles, with the addition of a possible technical case study. That will be the short answer. But you will start with a general online application form that I guess asks you to fill out some video essays as well, or answer questions in a video form. They just want to know how personable you are and what your personality is like. And then they might have a section on, depending on the role that you're applying to, they might have a section with simple coding questions related to SQL or Python. That was my experience. And once you pass that initial interview stage, you get into the in-person or virtual interviews with either a manager, senior manager, director, partner. They usually 2 rounds of interviews. The first round is pretty basic, mostly behavioral questions, and the second round is usually when they give you a case study, which if you're applying for a strategy role, it's going to be purely strategy, where they're going to expect you to propose a strategy to solve a business problem. Whereas if it's a more technical role, the case study is going to be slightly more technical, where you're going to be providing solutions, maybe depending on what platform you can use, what solution you can use, what coding language will you use, what the basic idea of your code would look like. I don't think they expect you to code it out, but you should be able to give them a wireframe of what it would look like if you were to code it out. That's been my experience. I'm not sure if Priyanshu had a different experience.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think you covered like most of the part. In my case as well, like it followed similar chronology, and during the case interview, which is like the last interview, even like my case study was tailored towards a little bit technical side, I would say, where they expected me to go and recommend some solutions which are probably relevant to cloud engineering or basically tech consulting as a whole. So you're completely right. It starts with some video interviews where you have to solve certain, quantitative questions. They test your speaking as well as your, quantitative skills. And then there is a behavioral part to it. And then finally, there's a case interview where there's a partner SM which takes a case interview. It could be purely numerical, where you have to solve certain problems, or it could be purely theoretical, where you just have to provide your views on the problem and provide some solution which are probably inclined towards where they are trying to put you into.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for those insights. I think there might be like a question, maybe Priyanshu, related to Priyanshu's work, but this person's asking that they currently work as a cyber cloud consultant at Deloitte, and planning to apply to the MBAN program. How can this person leverage their current experience with analytics side that the program shall offer to shape their career? Any insights on this? Kritika, please feel free to add on too if you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, sure. I can answer that, but I feel like Kritika will be able to answer that better because she also has prior Deloitte experience. But from my view, yes, you can definitely leverage your experience into cyber and cloud. And there are projects where we engage with our RA team, which is the risk advisory team, where the cyber security team sits. And we are working with them on daily basis on various proposals, on various projects, and we have to collaboratively work, to form solutions which are both on the security side as well as they're implemented on cloud. So definitely you can use your experience, and I would say like get in touch with some of these RA as well as cloud professionals when you land over here in Canada, and tell them about your previous role and that you're doing your MBAN from here and you like to go into consulting after your program. And keep an eye on all the opportunities and openings that are coming up in consulting. And I'm sure like leveraging your previous experience, it will be much easier for you to get into Deloitte or any other consulting firm. But again, since Kritika was in the same boat and she had previous work experience with Deloitte, so I think she can answer you better how to, tailor your experience or how to represent your experience to get that leverage.
Yeah, 100%. I did not, again, as Priyanshu said, did not think I wanted to go back into consulting. So I didn't go the traditional route of Deloitte to Deloitte, but I think your best bet is to have someone recommend you from your local office to the Canadian offices. I think that's the easiest route. Coming through a referral, you're definitely going to get a one-up over the other candidates that are in line for interviews, because it does come from a strong backing that your professional ethics is in line with Deloitte's values. But I think in addition, keep an eye out for any positions that are of interest to you within cloud. Do coffee chats. I think networking is a huge part of the Canadian culture. People are more than happy to do coffee chats with you and talk about what they do on a daily. That definitely helps put in a referral for you at the firm. And I think in general, if you do highlight a Deloitte experience and you're applying to any of the big four, that definitely gives you leverage over the other candidates that maybe don't come from a consulting background. Not to say that those that don't come from a consulting background don't stand a chance. No, for sure they stand a chance. But it's definitely a privilege or an addition to your application. So yeah, I think those three routes would definitely help.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your answers. Some more questions from the chat here. So this person's asking that they have an undergraduate in business and want to understand how to get into strategy consulting by employing the MBAN program as a catalyst. How would they select industry within consulting? And I guess generally speaking, how would someone from, let's say, a business background with not that much kind of, I guess, technical experience get into the consulting sector using the MBAN program?
I think business lays out a great foundation for consulting in general. Most traditional consultants did come from a business background versus a technical background. But I think that bridge between data and business is what consulting is looking for today. Your roles aren't the way they used to traditionally be. You're not just going to be working on Excel and PowerPoint. You're expected to know how to visualize the results that you get, how to better, because we're in a space that's evolving so quickly within their technology space. I think you need to know some basics of technology that the MBAN program anyway equips you with. But I think if you're going from business to strategy, it really depends on where your interest lies once you enter the MBAN program. Are you still inclined towards falling back on your business traits and that's your strong suite? Then you go that route and you get into strategy. But if you think that you're learning and picking up the technical coding skills a lot faster and your interest has pivoted towards being more technical, then you go into building solutions, building models, and you go into that side of strategy. So it really depends. Look on the websites of these companies, Deloitte, KPMG, EY, whichever company you're interested in, and really read what the description of the work they do within each of these pillars, right? And then see which, I guess, grabs your interest the most and apply accordingly.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight, Kritika. Priyanshi, do you have any insights on that to add, or?
Yeah, so completely agree. Like, there are both sides to consulting. You can also go into technical roles. You can also go into business roles. And as I said, like within cloud engineering itself, we have technical people who are building solutions, using Python and other coding languages. And then there are people like myself who are building strategies for the client, which are like more on the business side. And again, I would say, as Kritika mentioned, like give yourself some time when you go into the MBAN program. I've seen people, pivoting their interest. There were people from the business background, like there was one person from product management side, and he loved coding so much that he was doing like building models outside of which was the requirement of the program. So it grabbed his interest and he started building models. And then he was like, okay, I want to go towards data scientist roles. So MBAN opens like both the route, and it's up to you where your interest lies. And if we talk about like consulting in specific, we have roles open for like both the people, be it technical or be it the business side of it.
Awesome. Thank you. There's a question here specifically for Kritika. How did you find your finance accounting experience combined with the skill sets acquired from the MBAN program? Did your finance/accounting background provide a lot of value to what you're doing now?
So what I'm doing now, yes. To what I did in Deloitte in Dubai, yes. A lot of it, because I was still, if I talk about my Dubai experience with Deloitte, I was still doing audit analytics, so very closely aligned with accounting and finance, where I still had to understand the basics of accounting and finance to be able to perform any sort of analytics on that, and able to find any, if anyone's coming from an accounting background here, an audit background, they understand what material misstatements are. So if you're trying to find a misstatement in the financial books over a considerable threshold, you still need to understand those things in order to build in your analytics or automate any of those procedures. So in that role, yes. I think in the MBAN, it helped me maybe more with my soft skills than my and my problem solving skills more than my technical skills, because the analytics that I used in Dubai was with a different programming language than what they're used to using here. So I think there was a little bit of a disconnect there. But programming languages in general work the same way. You just need to understand the flow of how programming works, and you can pretty much pick up any other language. But again, when you come from a finance and accounting or a business background, your problem solving skills are pretty high. Your communication and presentation skills are pretty high. So I think that definitely gives you a leg above someone that comes from an entirely technical background. And of course, within my role at Deloitte, I'm constantly communicating and talking to people. I'm constantly presenting results. I think it's important to understand that as important as your analysis is, and you doing all the coding and finding out insights from the data, it's equally important to project your results in a way that your audience is going to understand. That's where that bridge between business and technical, I guess, comes in. You shouldn't just be able to do the technical analysis, but you should be able to explain it to users that might not be as technical. And that the MBAN program really equips you well with. So I think overall, I've been using a combination of my skills from my undergrad and my master's program into the role that I'm in today.
Excellent insights, Kritika. And I've been hearing that, like talking to some of the MBAN employers or internship employers, that special spot between knowing the technical, but also understanding the business side of it and having the skills to communicate that knowledge between different audiences is highly in demand right now. So I'm really glad to hear that you said that. Great. So I see another question here, and this is a good one for both of you to get some insights on. Can you briefly give some day-to-day examples of how you provide value and strategy consulting roles with your analytics skills. So you've gone over some of this, but anything more to add on this area? More of a question along the lines of what you see like you've talked a little bit about how the sector is moving away from more of what people thought was a traditional consulting roles and more towards analytics. Can you comment on like the value added and the growth of analytics and that trajectory and the importance of analytics in the consulting sector as you see it today and where you kind of see it going in the future?
So at least I can tell you from the work that I do, I think clients are not looking for just fluff words anymore. They're not looking for consulting jargon. They're really looking to back your insights up with data that either you have assessed yourself or that comes from industry. And in addition, I think it's very important to just understand like what machine learning is and what are the risks machine learning can pose to a company or a client. Similar with artificial intelligence in general, similar with large language models, things like this. I mean, understanding what a large language model is, understanding what machine learning capabilities are, understanding how far you can use Python to create a chatbot or create a generative AI solution. I think in order to even just understand how the mechanics of all of this works, the conversations that you have with your clients automatically get elevated. You're not just talking fluff words, but you're actually giving them something that they can bank on. And when you're working with a company such as Deloitte or EY or whichever, these credible sources, they bank on you heavily, and you're almost the gospel truth to them. Right? They expect you to be setting industry standards. And if you're not able to communicate these mechanics of how these things work, they're not going to be able to place their trust in you. I think that's the big component that I work with. I need to be able to understand, at least in my role, I advise a lot of clients on the risks of artificial intelligence, right? And I think the MBAN definitely helped me with understanding that and being able to apply that to my role currently. But in general, I think analytics within consulting has grown leaps and bounds, and there are so many opportunities now. I think that's the biggest growing sector within consulting. I think management consulting has taken one step back, and everything else is moving forward.
Excellent insights. Thank you for that. And that's a change that we're seeing across many sectors, not just consulting. Like these types of skills are really high in demand everywhere. But it's really interesting to see how it's reshaping how industry is done or how an entire kind of sector works.
And it's not just consulting, like providing strategy, right? Like if I work with an Aritzia or if I work with a Lululemon, we go into the details of even identifying what design, what product, what cloth type should these Aritzias and Lululemons use in order to get maximum customer attraction. And that comes with a lot of analytics backing. We need to track what cloth type is running in the fall season or in the winter season, what colors are running, what's trending on Twitter and Instagram, what are celebrities wearing. It goes into that level of detail where you have to extract data from Twitter, from Facebook, pictures and images, and do NLP, all of that stuff in order to be able to provide a suggestion that a Lululemon or an Aritzia can follow. So I think it's definitely moving away from just general intuition-driven results versus data-driven results.
Amazing. It's really so interesting to hear you give these examples so that people can really actually think about how analytics touches every aspect of your life, from like the shirt that you choose to buy or what you see in your ads and things like that. So thanks for those examples and insights. I see a question here, I guess for Priyanshu. So this person's that didn't even know that strategy for cloud engineering existed. He thought he was only coding. And so the question was, how did you approach the role when you got accepted into your role at Deloitte? And what is the working style like? Describe your day-to-day activities.
Yes, so you're completely right. Like cloud engineering, you'll believe like it is more about building solutions, on cloud and helping with the migration. So when I talk about like strategy, I would say like even all the technical things that we do at Deloitte has a strategy angle to it. So strategy basically involves, transforming their current working style. It could be transforming their how basically the firm thinks, or if they have a path to move to cloud. So whenever you are adopting something new, and it's just not limited to cloud, it's about any new technology which is implemented or being adopted by any of the firms. So they have to go about and construct a path towards achieving that goal. And that path involves building these strategies, which could involve building your people skills, building your governance models and workforce. So this is where people like, us come into the picture, where we help the clients to bridge the gap between those two things. So there is a current state, and then there is a future state where you want to be. And in order to move to the future state, it's just not the technology that helps you. Of course, that is one thing where you have to do certain steps to, meet that technological needs, but you also need to transform your workforces, your governance model, and other things in order to reach there. So there are some internal tools. I'll not talk about those because those are more complicated and technical ones, but we have these strategy tools and playbooks which we usually use on daily basis to work on proposals, to work on various projects where we see where exactly the firm is lacking right now. For example, in order to move to a new technology, you need to check in 10 boxes, and we check your current state. For example, you only check 2 boxes out of the 10 boxes. Then we work with the client to check the remaining 8 boxes, and then design a path towards, how to check those 8 boxes and how they can, fulfill the gap, how they can transform their organization to check all these 10 boxes. So that is where we come into the picture. And once this is being done, then probably we include all the technical teams, and they start building the solutions on cloud, and they start building the technology aspect of it. So strategy, I would say, like, is very important to every journey. And I'm sure like Kritika, since she's from Omnia AI, and Omnia AI themselves are building a lot of technical solutions, but they also have strategy side of it where they are helping clients to check all those boxes before starting the technical part.
Great, thank you. Now we are coming towards our last few minutes of this discussion panel, so I want to be mindful of our alumni panelists' time. So I want to end with like just the question of like, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is now considering the MBAN program and interested in getting into consulting? Like what advice, looking back now that you're like, past the MBAN program in successful careers, what advice would you give people considering this route right now, considering to apply for the MBAN program with the view of going into the consulting sector? If you were to go back and give yourself some advice at that point in the decision-making process, what would you say to people to think about and to research and to prepare for?
Yeah, sure. So I can add first. So I would say like start as early as possible, because consulting, as we said, like the fall cycle starts from mid of August and goes until mid of September. So for MBAN, it starts in September itself, August 10 basically. So you need to start as early as possible. Start building your resume, take help from Career Center. And in my case, Career Center helped a lot. And they have the resources available as well, where you can go and, learn about various case studies, do as much case study as possible, practice them, and build your resume according to the consulting format, basically, which means that you need to highlight your achievements as well as be more quantitative as much as possible in your resume. And yeah, that's some of the feedback. Start as early as possible, focus on your resume, be more quantitative, and start working on case studies.
Awesome.
Yeah, very similar. Definitely start early. Start working on your resume. There is a certain consulting resume style that you need to follow. And I know once you're in the MBAN program, you can leverage Case Coach. Case Coach helps prep your resume, your cover letter, as well as prepares you on answering some of those case study questions that you have. But once you're in the MBAN program, of course, the career services is there to help, and they do an amazing job of tailoring your resume and adding those action verbs and all of that stuff. But in addition, there is SCMP. SCMP helps you prep for consulting interviews. It's primarily tailored towards helping you interview with the consulting firms. Second, there is SCI, Strategy Consulting Initiative. That's what I was part of, and I think that really helped me, because you have to take up a role of either a junior consultant or a senior consultant within SCI, and then they partner you with a real client. You're going to be working with one of the local companies that you see in Vancouver, and you're going to be solving a real problem with them over the course of, 4 or 5 months. So I think that's great experience. You get your teamwork, you get to build a strategy, you get to go present in front of the client, in front of your SCI cohort. Super fun, and it's definitely doable with the MBAN. And I think last but not least, network a lot, do a lot of coffee chats, get to know people so that they'll be more inclined to probably putting in a referral for you. Definitely not the ultimate goal of a coffee chat, but it's great to make those connections. It will help you somewhere down your career. But yeah, I think between Priyanshu and I, we've covered most things that you should do to get onto a consulting role.
Awesome. Thank you so much to you both for taking the time today to answer all those questions and share your valuable insights and experience with us. We are at the hour now, so I will, if you guys need to go, feel free to go to your days. I will stay behind because I see a lot of admissions related questions in the chat box, which I will answer now. But I just want to take the time now to thank you both again for making the time and for contributing back to the MBAN community in such a meaningful way. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, and happy to answer any questions. Thanks for
Either of us. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.